Well, it's Indiana lawmakers make their way through the legislative session. We figure we sit down and talk with our friends at the Indiana Chamber of Commerce and see how things are going across the street from them and across the state of Indiana. So joining us on this interview is Vanessa Green-Summer. So Vanessa, thank you very much for being with us. How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me.
You got a smile on your face, even though that building is right across the street. You can see the monument to Murphy's Law.
Hey, I think people know me by now that I'm very positive and glass half full, and you got to look for every opportunity to make progress. And we live in a great state, so it's all about how we can make it better.
So how have things been going with the Chamber with respect to the legislature this session?
Well, I'm sure everybody understands it is a very short session, even shorter than normal, given kind of the fact that the legislature went in session in December for other items. And so I think that everyone is feeling, legislators, us, other advocates are feeling that condensed time frame, right? So Fast and Furious takes on a new meaning.
So explain our audience if we get some of the Chamber's agenda items and where are those agenda items right
Sure. So everything that we focus on fall into our Indiana Prosperity 2035 Economic Vision Plan, which again highlights 6 key areas of focus from workforce, education, economic growth, infrastructure, quality of place, and healthy citizens and communities. And we do a survey every fall to ask our members, well, which of those 6 pillars are they feeling kind of most important? And so, in past years, workforce has been number 1 in many cases. This year, economic growth came in as number 1, and education actually came in as number 2, in particular pre-K and early learning. And so we take our direction from that survey. And so the things that we're focused on this session and trying to move the ball are around economic growth and Indiana's competitiveness, and then also some items in the education sector, in particular around childcare.
Well, let's start with economic growth, because obviously Indiana has sort of marketplace as the state that works, great place to do business. Indiana's been kind of growing like crazy. What needs to be done in the economic growth area according to your membership?
So, look, I think there's a lot of things. As you say, Indiana is a great place for business, for employers, for prosperity, and we want to make it even better and really keep our eye on making sure it's the most competitive. So one of the things that we're really focused on this session, and this will be a multi-year effort, is around the legal climate and tort reform making sure that we have a balanced, fair legal system for employers to operate in, which gives them certainty and allows them to grow and contribute to that economic prosperity. So the Chamber is part of a new group, the Indiana Alliance for Legal Reform, that I think is notable in that it has business, employer groups from all sectors, part of it. And we are really leaning in around Representative Lehman's bill, House Bill 1417, that takes some kind of the first steps in that tort reform area. And then we will be kind of looking to do more in 27.
Now, we talk about tort reform, and full disclosure, everybody knows I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
So kind of make a living off of suing people, but only legitimate lawsuits. Don't waste my time with stupid crap. When we talk about tort reform, are we talking about caps on damages? Are we talking about the ratio of damages in Indiana, the punitive damages, like a
So the 2 things that are in the current bill involve public nuisance, and then also increasing the cap on qualified settlements. So again, that's not everything, but those are 2 pieces that we think are meaningful that we want to try to move the ball on this year.
Explain those to our audience, what those actually mean.
So the cap on qualified settlements right now is set at $5,000, and the bill takes it to $100,000. And look, this is all about incentivizing and kind of encouraging both sides to come together to reach a settlement where it makes sense. So again, you don't end up with frivolous lawsuits in the court system and or in the legal system. And again, I think that again, our perspective is this is important to Indiana's competitiveness and businesses seeing this as a place that they want to continue to grow. And then public nuisance, I kind of think about it as making sure that liability lives with responsibility. And this is not a case that happened in Indiana, but what this provision is meant to address is, I believe it was in California, where Kia, the car manufacturer, was sued by, I believe, a municipality in California for not having kind of safe enough cars. All their cars were getting broken into, and the city sued them, or the municipality sued them for damages. So again, those are two things that the business community is focused on, and I'm sure there will be more conversations to come.
You said this was a 2 to 3 year window, because I remember early on in legislation, I called it sort of the Uber bill, that if you're in an accident, you couldn't sue Uber, but you could sue the driver. But then that was a little bit maybe too controversial for lawmakers, taking this first big chunk. So they said, hey, maybe we can talk to the Uber people, the driver folks, and let's sort of work out something reasonable that everybody can live with, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, we have been more focused on those other two provisions that I mentioned. So again, I know that provision related to Uber was taken out, but that had not been as much of our focus.
Usually when we say tort reform, it's the classic. People think it's the caps on damages. Like if grandma's walking across the street and she gets hit by a car, she can only sue for pain, and she can't sue for pain and suffering, just the economic damages that grandma might have suffered, versus her grandson, who's a little bit younger, can get more money and more recovery for his damages. So how do you make sure that the victims are taken care of and the tort fees are also held accountable? How was that?
Sure. I think that speaks to us wanting to continue these conversations, and this being not something, this being a multi-year effort where we want to make sure all stakeholders are at the table and we work through it so that, again, it is a balanced, fair system that supports economic growth and Indiana being competitive while also kind of recognizing all of those concerns.
Vanessa Green,
look forward to working on it.
Vanessa Green Summers, the head of the Indiana Chamber, our guest on the program today, talking about some of the Chamber's agenda and how things have been going on this legislative session. Let's talk about education, because obviously education always seems to be a big deal. It's the biggest expenditure of our state budget, at least it was today, because it could be Medicaid, Medicare, come tomorrow, depending on how that kind of grows. Indiana is a choice state. We've got new accountability measures. I was looking at some of my old notes the other day. I remember the whole thing about the ISEP test being 2-3 days long. That got shortened out. What needs to still be done in education reform?
So, look, I think going back to our economic vision plan, Indiana Prosperity 2035, we are very focused on, one, early learning and childcare, and then two, increasing and helping students achieve more when it comes to reading and math, right? Those are the foundational skills that students need to be successful, enter the workforce, be part of our kind of community here in Indiana. So, but this session, given all of the concern and challenges in the childcare and early learning space with the, in particular, the funding challenges related to CCDF, that is where we have chose to really lean in. And to us, this is a workforce issue, right? We've done studies with the U.S. Chamber Foundation and Early Learning Indiana that quantify the economic impact on Indiana at $4 billion a year because of the lack of affordable and accessible childcare. So it is meaningful and important that we address this issue. It is a non-budget year, so that makes it even more challenging when you're dealing with a funding issue. So we've approached it kind of a all of the above scenario where there are, there's a proposal moving from Becky Cash that would expand the employer tax credit that can be spent on childcare needs and things to make sure that tax credit and incentive is used and helps address and gets employers more in the game. There's also a proposal by Ethan Lawson that would prohibit homeowners associations from prohibiting legal in-home childcare centers in their in their area. Yeah. And again, that maybe some may view that as small, but we're looking at all options to try to address this, and that obviously addresses supply. And then there also was an amendment from Senator Mishler for Senate Bill 4 that would allow CCDF to it opened up the Fiscal Growth and Responsibility Fund to CCDF as another use. And so, again, we want to bring the employer voice and the business community voice to what we think is a really important issue from a workforce perspective and a competitiveness perspective for Indiana.
Vanessa Green Summers, our guest on the program today, as we talk about some of the issues facing Indiana businesses here in Indiana. On the child care issue, I know there's talk about licensure and sort of expanding to make, because obviously there's a heavy demand, so you have to increase the supply, about sort of in-home, child care places, but we hear some of the stories that are kind of a little bit disturbing. Mm-hmm. So I suppose the question is, how do we expand child care opportunities for Indiana's workforce, but make sure we maintain that quality control?
Sure. I mean, look, I think that is really important, and that's why I said legal and kind of, permitted and licensed child care centers in that, that are in home. But so we are very supportive of that. But also, I think we recognize that different situations are going to fit different communities and different environments. And that's why we want to take a all of the above approach, and why I think, we are also really leaning in with all of our employers and the business community on, up in Northeast Indiana, they are pushing forward on a kind of pilot, a TRICARE model where the parents, some economic development money, and business are all paying to kind of make sure that their child care needs are met. There's a multitude of examples across the state of people being really creative, but the challenges are real, and we need to kind of hit it head on.
Has Indiana businesses ever thought about some places, obviously if you're a small mom and pop operation, you may not have the space to do it, but if you're a bit of a bigger company, it's sort of like bring your kid to work day, where you have the child care place act literally at the job. Yep,
that is. I mean, I think there are definitely examples of that with larger employers. And look, that gets to the tax credit that the legislature is looking to expand this session to, again, encourage and incentivize more of that creativity, and employers. Again, we want to be part of the solution, and so we're ready to do that.
Vanessa Green Summers with us on the program today. She's the head of the Indiana Chamber, so we're just getting caught up on things that have been going on here in the state of Indiana. What else has been on the Chamber's agenda?
So, one other thing, and this has been a long-standing Chamber priority, is around local government modernization and efficiency. And so there are two bills moving, one in the House or one that originated in the House and one that originated in the Senate, kind of take a little bit different approaches, but try to look at township government and how do we make that more efficient, eliminate where it makes sense, kind of provide that data to do that. And so we are supportive of those efforts moving forward as we look to make sure all levels of government are as efficient as possible to support communities, Hoosiers, and kind of make us the most competitive we can be.
It's funny you bring up township government, because I've been here in Indiana now since 2004. When I heard about township government, like what the, huh? Like that's like a 19th century model that's 200 years later. We don't go to a blacksmith as we used to maybe 200 years ago. So why, I guess sort of what has been the pushback from the township boards and trustees? Because that I've never quite fully comprehended.
I mean, look, I don't want to speak for them, but I think that, Indiana has lots of different communities, lots of rural communities, is a very, expansive state. And so those townships can be important in different communities. And so I do think we got to take a thoughtful approach and make sure we are including local involvement and perspective, which I think these bills do to varying degrees. And I know I was recently on a panel with the Association of Counties, and I think everybody's talking about these issues, right? In the current fiscal environment, how do we find efficiencies? How do we work together? How do we collaborate in new ways? And I think the fact that there are 2 bills still in the pipeline on kind of local government modernization and township reform speak to the fact that people are willing to think differently and maybe come to the table, and we look forward to being a part of it.
I think the property tax situation has influenced the township debate. It's just a thought.
Yes, I agree. But I also think that, again, let's take that opportunity to find some meaningful change that continues to help move the state forward.
Vanessa Green-Summers with us for a few more minutes on the program date. When we look at Indiana's fiscal health, so obviously the state's fiscal health impacts businesses, impacts basically everything. We had the Medicaid-related issue that's still kind of out there, Medicaid debt. How does that impact? It doesn't impact businesses directly, but I also argue technically it does, in the sense that my mom or dad, or maybe my younger cousin who's needs these government services, but we've got to make sure it's sufficient. So has the chamber taken a position on Medicaid reform?
So I wouldn't say we haven't taken a position specifically on, I guess, what's on the table. But I would say generally, healthcare is an extremely important issue, as you mentioned, to Indiana, to employers, to Hoosiers. And, we may have talked about this before, but the chamber operates a health insurance plan for small businesses, Chamber Care, again, to speak to, we know this is a big deal, and addressing and making sure that employers and employees have access to, good quality health care at the most kind of affordable price. Also gets to that medical, kind of some of those issues. And, we had Chamber Day last week, rescheduled from the snowstorm the week before. If you're listening and you attended, thank you for sticking with us on the pivot. But back to Indiana's fiscal house, we had both Comptroller Nashala and then Secretary Hirschman speak about Secretary Hirschman talked about the kind of positive position Indiana is from a revenue perspective compared to where we were last April, but we've got to keep our eye on the ball, right? And that's going to play into kind of Medicaid and spending and all of that. And then Comptroller Nashala just talked about, again, where we are as a state in terms of our strong fiscal position and lack of debt and kind of cash reserves and all of that. And we finished up with Speaker Houston and Senate President Pro Tem Rod Bray. And one of the questions I asked them was, okay, I know you're so focused on 26, but what's going to be your big focus in 27? And Speaker Houston talked about Medicaid and healthcare as a big area that the legislature will be looking at. So to your point, I think there will be lots of conversations about Medicaid. It is such a huge cost driver for the state outside of education. And we definitely will be kind of engaged in those, trying to make sure that we represent employers and help the state move forward in the best way possible to keep us as competitive as possible.
Is Indiana doing enough to promote healthy lifestyles?
So that, the last pillar in Indiana Prosperity 2035 is healthy citizens and communities. So we have long been involved. We have an affiliate organization, the Wellness Council of Indiana, which works with employers on the wellness issue and how do you take steps with your employees. And so I think Indiana has done a lot, but there is definitely more to do. And many people know some of the public health metrics that we look at. The smoking metric has actually gone below 15%, which was a target that we set. We were very active in increasing the cigarette tax last year. But there's other metrics around obesity, drug addiction, mental health, where we do not rank high at all when you stack rank us against other states. And so I think that there's more work to do there.
Well, one last question. The mental health component. 'Cause I know mental health has been an issue for a while, then it's finally starting to really get addressed, and the attention is really being focused on it the way it maybe hasn't been in the past because the stereotypes have been associated with the mental health universe. What is Indiana doing, or what can we do more in that mental health space?
So, look, I think you hit on a very important topic, and, it's something that I feel like we probably have been less focused on legislatively, but to your point, there probably will be more that is coming in that regard. And we've been leaning in more around the work that our Wellness Council does to try to arm employers with resources to help their employees deal with kind of very real mental health issues. And we actually partner with Kicking the Stigma that the Indianapolis Colts are a part of to, again, try to address how people talk about it, right, and deal with it, and so that there's not a stigma with it.
So 30 days and change left before lawmakers hopefully get out of here.
Less than that.
Less than 30.
The 27th is when, February 27th is when they're supposed to get out.
I knock on wood because we all know what that means. So in the final days, as we come to the home stretch of the legislature, what's the chamber really going to be focused on, really trying to push across the finish line?
So look, I think we're going to be trying to push across the finish line, tort reform, make sure these childcare bills move forward. And there's also, I didn't even mention, but some work-based learning legislation to help employers with that. And then also, we want to make that sandbox as competitive as possible for business. And some of that also means we're defending against things that maybe we think are going too far in one direction. And so we will be doing a bit of that in the last couple weeks.
That's Green Summers. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Great to be with you.